August 6th, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan at approximately 8:15 a.m. Nicknamed Little Boy, the bomb was released by the Enola Gay, a B-29 bomber piloted by Brig Paul Tibbets. It explodes 2,000 feet above the ground, killing 80,000 people instantly. One of the main reasons for the use of the bomb by U.S. officials is that it would force Japan to surrender unconditionally. My thesis is that America was justified in bombing Japan. As if they didn't, then there would be a lot more casualties in World War II. Not just that, but America had very little choice, as Japan was putting them in a rough position. It was September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland and World War was announced. America joined in 2 years later after the devastating attacks on Pearl Harbor, fighting Germany, Italy, and Japan. But because of my thesis, I'm going to focus on only two battles between Japan and America, specifically the battles leading up to Hiroshima. The battle, unlike many, was seen or at least thought to happen, so this caused America to prepare, with Admiral Kimmel sending the following: 1,851 U.S. Marines, 760 sailors, two fighter squadrons, a PBY squadron, half a squadron of dive bombers, and half a squadron of torpedo bombers. But by December 4th, 1941, the total number of members in the garrison went down to only 524 officers and men, 449 Marines, 69 sailors, and a six-man radio detachment from the U.S. Army. And because Wake Island had a large amount of weaponry, they couldn't man the weapons because there were not enough men. So this then caused Major James Patrick Synod Devereux to arrive on Wake on October 12th, 1941, to take charge of the army there. But around 6:40 a.m. on December 8th, 1941, the Army radio trailer at Wake's airfield received an uncoded emergency message from Pearl Harbor saying, "SOS, island of Oahu attacked by Japanese dive bombers. This is the real thing." After this message, Marine artillerymen and machine gunners boarded their trucks and went off to their battle stations. And then, around 11:58 a.m., 27 Japanese medium bombers took off south of Wake's airfield, heading to Wake. And the atoll's defenders had only seconds to react. But they thought that the Japanese were the expected flight of B-17 bombers from Hawaii. This mistake then led Japan to do the mass damage that they did to the American weaponry, while also killing or wounding half of the squadron's personnel. Certain that the enemy would strike again, Wake's army nerved itself for a siege. More than 400 volunteers fought with their fellow Americans. 186 joined Marine gun crews. The other volunteers helped by providing ammunition and food. Unfortunately, after a long fight, Japan did conquer Wake Island. But luckily for America, the Japanese Navy lost 2 destroyers, 1 submarine, 21 aircraft, and 900 to 1,000 lives to conquer Wake. Unfortunately for Japan, however, fewer than 100 Americans died during the fight, including just 46 Marines and 3 sailors. A true victory for both sides. The battle started with aircraft carriers attacking and severely damaging the U.S. base on Midway. Unbeknownst to the Japanese, however, the U.S. carrier forces were just east to the island and ready for a battle. After their initial attacks, the Japanese aircraft returned to their carriers to rearm and refuel. While the aircraft was returning, the Japanese Navy became aware of the presence of U.S. naval forces in the area. Bombers and torpedo launchers from the USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, USS Yorktown attacked the Japanese fleet. 3 Japanese carriers were hit and destroyed. The only surviving Japanese carrier responded with 2 waves of attacks, both times bombing the USS Yorktown, leaving it severely damaged but still afloat. On the afternoon of June 4th, a USS Yorktown scout plane located the Hairu, a ship used for launching aircraft. An Enterprise sent dive bombers to attack it. That attack left the Hairu burning and unable to launch aircraft before it finally sank. Over the next 2 days, the U.S. troops at sea and on Midway continued their attacks, forcing the Japanese to abandon the battle and retreat. The Japanese lost approximately 3,057 men, 4 carriers, 1 cruisers, and hundreds upon hundreds of aircraft, while the United States lost approximately 362 men, 1 carrier, 1 destroyer, and 144 aircraft. This critical U.S. victory stopped the growth of Japan in the Pacific and put the United States in a positive position to begin shrinking the Japanese empire through a years-long series of island-hopping invasions and several even longer battles. By July 1945, Germany had surrendered, and war in Europe was over. Japan, however, refused to submit to the terms outlined in the Allies' Potsdam Declaration. And in the eyes of U.S. officials, the only way to get Japan to surrender was to invade and attack the Japanese homeland. But unfortunately, Japan had a strict determination not to surrender. They had placed large armies to meet the expected American invasion of Japan. Japan's leaders hoped to prevail not by defeating American forces, but by inflicting massive casualties with the hope to scare off America. This got the attention of American President Harry S. Truman in the summer of 1945 when he authorized the use of the world's first atomic bomb. In light of intelligence reports about Japan's commitment to continue fighting, Truman and his military advisors were determined and willing to use every ounce of weapon at their disposal to bring the war to an immediate as well as permanent end. Unfortunately, neither Truman nor any of his advisors ever debated if the atomic bombs should be used, as they knew what the bombs could do. They only debated how and where the bomb should be used. In the spring of 1945, scientists and physicists employed by the government tried to figure out how to use the bomb. Japan needed to be convinced to surrender as fast as possible, because the United States had just 2 atomic bombs, and they were quite tired of war, and additional weapons could not be ready for deployment for several more weeks. Meanwhile, thousands of Chinese, American, and Japanese soldiers continued to die every day as the war continued. Consequently, Truman approved the plans to drop atomic bombs on a list of pre-selected Japanese cities. The list did not include Tokyo and Kyoto because of their political and historical importance. Instead, the intended target of the first atomic bomb was Hiroshima, a fan-shaped city of approximately 550,000 people that occupied the estuary of the Ota River. The city was also home to the headquarters of Japanese army that defended the island of Kyushu, as well as many war industries. And then, at 2:45 a.m. on Monday, August 6, 1945, 3 American bombers of America took off from an airfield on the Pacific island of Tinian. Colonel Paul Tibbets piloted the lead bomber, Enola Gay, which carried a nuclear bomb named Little Boy. Despite the bomb's nickname, it weighed nearly 10,000 pounds. As a result, the overloaded Enola Gay used more than 2 miles of runway to get in the air. At 7:15 a.m., the bomber crew armed the bomb, and the plane began its ascent to the bombing altitude of 31,000 feet. That morning, Tantamo had agreed to help a friend move a large amour filled with clothes out to the suburbs. As the 2 men went down the street, they heard an air siren go off. This was normal for them, so the men were not particularly worried. They continued until eventually the pair reached their destination. There was no sound of planes. The morning was still. The place was cool and pleasant. But then, at 8:14 a.m. Hiroshima time, the Enola Gay arrived over the city. Freebie took control of the bomber and opened the bomb bay doors. Just after 8:15 a.m., Freebie released Little Boy from its restraints. The bomb fell away from the Enola Gay. The plane jumped nearly 10 feet with a sudden loss in weight. Tibbets immediately resumed control of the plane and did a sharp 155-degree turn. He had practiced this difficult maneuver for months because he had been instructed that he had less than 45 seconds to get his plane clear of the subsequent explosion. Not even the scientists such as Oppenheimer, who designed the bomb, were sure if the Enola Gay would survive the shockwaves from the blast. Little Boy fell almost 6 miles in 45 seconds before detonating at an altitude of 2,000 feet. The bomb exploded with a force of more than 15,000 tons of TNT. Less than 2% of the bomb's uranium achieved fission. The resulting reaction engulfed the city in a blinding flash of heat and light. The temperature at ground level reached 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit in less than a second. The bomb vaporized people half a mile away from ground zero. Bronze statues melted, roof tiles fused, and the exposed skin of people miles away burned from the intense infrared energy unleashed. At least 80,000 died instantly, and even more after that. America thought this would work. America thought that the bomb would be enough. But unfortunately, Japan still fought. But America had its full of war. On August 4th, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Boxcar took off from Tinian at 3:47 a.m. that morning. In its belly was Fat Man. The atomic bomb was already armed, and it was ready to go. And Major Charles W. Sweeney flew the plane and let the bomb go on Nagasaki. Fat Man detonated at an altitude of 1,650 feet over Nagasaki with a yield of 21 kilotons, about 40% more powerful than Little Boy had ever been. Tens of thousands of citizens, especially children, had already been evacuated from the city. The series of hills bracing Nagasaki also somewhat confined the initial blast and restricted the damage. And this finally did it. After this, Japan had surrendered, and the war was finally over.